We're back. Of course, the focus today was on the British monarchy as Prince William wed Catherine Middleton. But a new book focuses on an American prince, John F. Kennedy Jr., as he grew up in the spotlight as a fun-loving daredevil, if you will. His former girlfriend, Christina Haig, writes about their friendship and later romance in her memoir called Come to the Edge. Welcome, Christina. Thank you. You know, we dug up something He was such a good guy when I got to meet him a number of times. And as you know, he was a wonderful guy. And he was nice enough to do my first interview on my first show back here 15 years ago.
Wow.
I looked somewhat different. He looked always great, as you know.
Did, right?
Well, he looks great. Here he is telling me about President Nixon, the night that Nixon invited him, his mother, and his sister to the White House back in 1971. He's recounting the whole night with us. Here he is, John F. Kennedy Jr.
And it was very warm, and he was a wonderful host, and we saw the rooms where we had lived. And my sister, I was sort of a hyperactive child, and my sister had a bet with me that either I would spill my milk or my shirt tail would be untucked, because that used to happen with great frequency. And so I'd gotten through most of the dinner, and shirt tail was in and milk was upright, and I think we were at dessert and something caught my attention, and the milk went right over his lap, and he just was very, just didn't blink and just kind of wiped it up, and I lost the bet, and I was, died slowly there in the corner, but it was a memorable evening.
Well, I still had my laugh back then. I had my hoot of a laugh back then. So here you've written a book about this guy, and as I said, the Correspondents' Dinner is coming tomorrow night here in Washington. I met him at that. I think it was the last time I saw him. And you had an amazing life. I looked at the pictures. I think it was at Vanity Fair. It was segmenting your book. And you guys didn't sit around and watch movies together.
No.
You led an amazing life almost out of the movies.
We had a lot of fun.
Well, obviously, but you had adventure, too. And I've noticed this about the Kennedys. I'm trying to write a book about Jack, his father, again.
Right.
And they did live life a little more on the edge. The title of your book makes perfect sense to me. Tell us about this story I've heard you tell about Jamaica.
Well, can I just say one thing? The title is actually Come to the Edge, not On the Edge. And I think it's about embracing life to the fullest, and I think John did that. And to me, it's also about falling in love. It is a love story. But we did have adventures. And in Jamaica, we were kayaking once, and I had a broken leg, but we were kayaking. And we got into a little trouble with a reef and a wave. We did come out of it, but it was a close call.
So what was he like?
What was he like? He was wonderful. He was exciting. He was a great friend. He was a great boyfriend. He was a terrific guy. And I loved that you played that clip. I loved hearing that story. I'd heard it before. I'd heard him tell it, but it was great.
Well, we'll show you a little more of him in action, and you react to what you see here. Here he is, Jack Kennedy's kid, John Kennedy Jr., once called John in the papers. I think it was his nickname, no matter what he says. Let's listen.
We never called him that.
Oh, no. Okay, this is an AP story moved last week on the wires out of Albany, New York. I don't know why Albany. New York's Democratic Party chairwoman said Friday the mutual friend has told her John F. Kennedy Jr. is interested in running for the U.S. Senate against Alphonse D'Amato, Republican incumbent. Let me ask you this. What do you think of the quality of journalism which has a writer, saying that they heard from somebody who heard from somebody who heard from somebody they were running for the Senate? Rate that as a journalist, that story, John Kennedy.
Well, I have a feeling that you're really asking me if it's true.
Part of the answer could be that.
Why don't I just dispense with that off the bat and say it's absolutely not that we're running a magazine, and as you no doubt know, that's more than a full-time job. And, I understand part of the, someone once said to me, journalists are in the business of harvesting attention, and if that's what that does, then so be it. But it's not true.
Did you ever have a sense back then, when you were dating him all those years, that John Kennedy Jr. might follow in his father's footsteps?
Well, I would have voted for him, but, the book really talks about the formative years. We were 15, and we dated from 25 till we were 30, and I think he was figuring out what he was doing. I think he knew that there was that possibility there if he ever got behind it. But I think George was a good fit for him. I think it was about politics, but it also had an artistic side, and he was his mother's son. So.
Tell me about his mother and how you got to know him, what her attitude was toward him. We only have 30 seconds.
Okay. She adored him. She adored him, and he made her laugh, and he was the apple of her eye.
Okay, thank you so much. The name of the book is Come to the Edge. The delightful author, I can tell already, is delightful, Christina Haig.